I first heard that there was going to be a Last of Us remake, like many of you, I thought, this is way too soon. Seems unnecessary and sounds like a cynical money grab. But also, like many of you, I know that the second this game drops, I will be buying it and loving every minute of it. Dr. Pooplove here, and today I want to talk about everything we know about The Last of Us remake so far. And stick around to the end where I talk about some important open questions that still need answers. But let's get into it. The first thing we know about The Last of Us remake is that it exists. Originally leaked by Jason Schreier in an article from last year, the visual arts service group at Sony began developing a remake of the critically acclaimed PlayStation 3 swan song, The Last of Us, after potentially considering a remake of the original Uncharted Drake's Fortune. And in this article, it explains that these efforts were eventually taken over by Naughty Dog themselves. To me, of course, this is a bit of a disappointment, as I think, like many, we would prefer Naughty Dog be dedicating their resources to making a brand new game and potentially a new IP after Factions 2, of course. But at least this remake will undergo a Naughty Dog level of scrutiny and polish before coming to us. And from a business standpoint, this remake makes sense. The Last of Us HBO series is slated for release in 2023, and Sony seems to have this plan in place that creates synergy between the marketing of their new PlayStation Studios movies or series and the respective video game. They did this with the Uncharted 4 Legacy remaster, releasing just a few weeks ahead of the Uncharted movie. And so, without remaking The Last of Us, Sony would either have to help promote the show with the 2014 remaster of The Last of Us, which is 8 years old and often goes for like $10, or they could promote it with the most recent Last of Us Part 2, which would basically spoil the events of the show fans just got invested in. So yeah, selling a brand new remake that aligns closely with The Last of Us HBO Season 1 makes sense, at least from a business perspective. But let's continue with more of what we know. We also got a few things earlier this year in 2022 that provide some hints as to what the game might look like, what it might be called, and when it might come out. At Sony's 2022 CES event, there was a brief glimpse shown of Joel and Ellie character models that matches the timeline of the original story that The Last of Us takes place. We see that some of this design looks more closely to that of The Last of Us Part 2 in their flashbacks, and so many have assumed that this is what Joel and Ellie are going to be looking like in the remake, as opposed to what they look like in the original Last of Us. And it makes sense that with the remake, they would try to design these to align to what we saw in The Last of Us Part 2 during those flashbacks. We also got a bit of a hint as to what the name of this game might be when Neil Druckmann, during an interview with Tom Holland regarding the Uncharted movie, was donning a cap that seems to have read The Last of Us Part 1. Of course, this would make sense as a title, as again, they would likely want this to synergize more closely with The Last of Us Part 2, and to literally have the game called The Last of Us Remake seems like a cheesy name for such a serious game. And then we also have word from a reliable source, Tom Henderson, who has been seen as reputable, and he has been told from sources that this remake is almost done and could release this year in 2022. This was further reiterated by another reputable source, Jeff Grubb, who said that he's heard from multiple people that this game is slated for a holiday 2022 release. Of course, as of the time of posting this video, Sony has been pretty quiet as to what the rest of this year would look like, with God of War Ragnarok supposedly supposed to come out as well this year. Of course, the Last of Us Remake hasn't been officially even announced, and that might deter you from thinking it might not even release this year, but it does make sense as Naughty Dog's desire has been to not talk about their games until they are close to ready. And this is a bit of an exciting thing just because we know that eventually, when Sony does have a showcase, we have a good chance of seeing something Naughty Dog related, whether it be this or crossing my fingers for The Last of Us Factions 2. And those are the main things we know right now. We know it is happening, and we have a few hints as to what it looks like and potentially how ready it is. And there are a few kind of smaller tidbits out there that mostly just reiterate what we already talked about here. But there are a few important open questions that I think will need some answers. The first is, how faithful will this remake be to the original story of The Last of Us? Will any of the scenes change? Will there be new scenes added? And will Left Behind be a part of this game, or will it be perhaps intertwined somehow as a single narrative? And will there be any changes that align more closely with what the HBO show has been doing? The second thing is, will this remake maintain the same type of gameplay as the original? Or will the mechanics from The Last of Us Part 2, such as the dodge or the prone, make their way into this game? And will there be any changes to the design of the various levels throughout? Will Naughty Dog find any way to incorporate their wide linear design philosophy into certain sections? And most importantly, what about the rope? And the third, and perhaps most important question, for me at least, is, will this remake contain a remake of the absolute best part about this game, which is called The Last of Us Factions? We know that the sequel to Naughty Dog's Factions multiplayer is supposed to be a standalone experience, and from all we've heard, it is seemingly more ambitious than just a remake of the same multiplayer mode, but perhaps a Factions remake could be a legacy suite that could serve as a little taste for us Factions fans who have been eagerly waiting for potential Battle Royale or co-op Horde mode. But of course, if you want to see everything that we know about Factions 2 so far, you should check this video out. But otherwise, let me know what you think about this remake. And so long, Pooper Troopers.